Far across the galaxy, in a massive space station that gleamed like a jewel among the stars, Admiral Vexithan studied the holographic display before him. The blue and green planet rotated slowly in the light, looking peaceful and harmless. Earth, the humans called it, just another world to add to the great Zephyrian Empire. Vexithan was tall and thin, with purple skin that shimmered under the station's lights. His four eyes moved independently as he examined every detail of the target world. Behind him, dozens of his officers worked at glowing control panels, their voices creating a constant buzz of activity. "Sir," called out Commander Crix from across the room, "our scouts have finished their report on the human species." Vexithan turned, his long neck twisting in a way that would have looked impossible to human eyes. "Tell me what we face, Commander." Crix activated his own display, showing images of human cities, vehicles, and technology. "They are a young species, Admiral. Very primitive. They still use chemical rockets to leave their planet. Most of their population lives on the surface of just one world. They have some basic satellites and a few small outposts on their moon, but nothing more." The Admiral's mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his people. "How many ships do they have?" "Perhaps a few hundred small craft, sir. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest patrol vessels. Their weapons appear to be simple projectile systems and basic energy beams. They have no shields, no faster-than-light travel, and no real military organization beyond their planet." Vexithan nodded, feeling the familiar satisfaction that came before an easy conquest. In his long career, he had overseen the subjugation of over 300 worlds. Some had put up brave fights, others had surrendered immediately when they saw the might of the Empire. But none had ever truly challenged the Zephyrian war machine. "What about their numbers?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion individuals, sir. A decent population for workers and servants once we establish control." The Admiral walked to the great viewing window that dominated one wall of the command center. Beyond the transparent barrier, he could see rows upon rows of Zephyrian warships, 50,000 vessels of various sizes, from small fighters to massive battleships that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. The fleet stretched as far as the eye could see, a testament to the Empire's power. "Sir," another voice called out. This was Lieutenant Zara, the youngest officer on the command staff. "Should we attempt communication with the humans first? Standard protocol suggests offering them a chance to surrender before we begin the attack." Vexithan's four eyes focused on the young officer, and several other commanders chuckled at her question. The sound was like metal scraping against stone. "Lieutenant," the Admiral said slowly, "how long have you served in the Imperial Navy?" 3 cycles, sir." "And how many conquests have you witnessed?" Zara's skin darkened slightly, a sign of embarrassment among her people. "This would be my first, Admiral." Vexithan nodded patiently. "Then let me educate you about how these operations proceed. We have studied this species for several of their years. They are violent, stubborn, and unpredictable. They fight wars among themselves constantly, showing no ability to unite even against common threats. If we offer them a chance to surrender, they will waste our time with meaningless negotiations and false bravery." He gestured toward the display showing Earth. "It is better to demonstrate our superiority immediately. A quick, decisive show of force will save lives on both sides. They will see our fleet, understand they cannot win, and submit. This is how it always goes with primitive species." The other officers murmured their agreement. Commander Crix stepped forward. "Admiral, our intelligence report suggests the humans have a saying, 'The nail that sticks up gets hammered down.' Perhaps they will be more practical than most." "Perhaps," Vexithan agreed. "But I have learned not to expect wisdom from species that have not yet left their home system. They simply lack the perspective to understand their place in the greater galaxy." The Admiral returned to his command chair, an elaborate throne that adjusted to his alien physiology. "Begin preparations for hyperspace jump. I want the fleet positioned at the edge of their solar system within 2 days. Full battle formation." Around the command center, officers began inputting commands and coordinating with the various ship captains. The massive fleet would need careful organization to make the jump together. 50,000 ships moving through hyperspace required precise timing and navigation. "Sir," called out the navigation officer. "Course plotted and ready. All ships report prepared for jump." Vexithan leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of command settle around him like a familiar cloak. This would be conquest number 301. After this, the Empire would control every inhabited system within this spiral arm of the galaxy. It was a satisfying thought. "One more thing, Lieutenant Zara," he said, addressing the young officer again. "You asked about communication with the humans. There is actually wisdom in your question, though not in the way you intended." Zara straightened, eager to learn from her superior. "We will indeed send them a message," the Admiral continued, "but it will not be an offer to surrender. It will be a simple statement of fact. They are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. This message will be sent after our fleet arrives, and they can see our power with their own eyes. It saves time and prevents them from harboring false hope." The young officer nodded, though she still looked uncertain. Vexthon noticed her expression and decided to share one more piece of wisdom. "Lieutenant, in all my years of service, I have learned that there are two types of species in this galaxy. Those who accept the natural order quickly, and those who resist it briefly before accepting it anyway. The humans, based on our observations, appear to be the second type. They will posture and make threats, but when they see our fleet, reality will set in." He activated his personal communication system, sending a message to all ship captains simultaneously. "Attention, fleet commanders. We advance on the human homeworld in 2 days. This species has shown no evidence of advanced technology or unified government. Expect minimal resistance. Standard conquest protocols apply. Secure their major population centers. Neutralize any military forces, and prepare for occupation duties." Responses began coming in immediately from the various ship captains, all expressing confidence and readiness. These were experienced warriors who had participated in dozens of conquests. They knew their business. As the command center buzzed with preparation activity, Vexthon allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Soon the Empire would span another sector of space. The humans would learn their place in the galactic order, just as so many species had before them. He looked once more at the image of Earth rotating peacefully in the holographic display. Such a pretty little world. Soon it would join the thousands of other pretty little worlds that serve the Empire's glory. The Admiral had no way of knowing that at that very moment, deep beneath the surface of that pretty little world, human observers were watching his fleet through sensors more advanced than anything in his wildest imagination. Nor could he know that these same humans were already analyzing every detail of his ships, his weapons, and his tactics with technology that made his most sophisticated equipment look like stone tools. The trap was set. The Empire was coming, and humanity was ready. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the underground command center, watching the massive screens that covered every wall. The room was buried 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains, connected to a network of similar facilities around Earth. Above her head, normal life continued. People went to work, children played in parks, and news anchors talked about weather and politics. None of them knew that an alien invasion fleet was just 2 days away. "Status report," Sarah said calmly. Lieutenant Rodriguez, a young man with nervous energy, looked up from his console. "The Zephyrian fleet is maintaining formation at the edge of our detection range. 50,000 ships, just as our deep space observers reported." Sarah nodded. For the past 5 years, humanity had been watching the Zephyrian Empire expand across the galaxy. They had seen world after world fall to the alien forces. Each conquest followed the same pattern. The Empire arrived with overwhelming force. The target species surrendered or was quickly crushed, and another civilization joined the Empire as servants. "Any change in their approach vector?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. They're coming straight for Earth, just as predicted." Sarah walked to the central display, which showed a 3-dimensional map of the solar system. Red dots marked the positions of Zephyrian ships, while blue dots showed Earth's official space assets, a few hundred outdated-looking vessels that appeared to be humanity's entire space fleet. "Perfect," she said softly. Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility's chief scientist, approached with a tablet in his hands. He was older than most of the staff, with gray hair and kind eyes that hid one of the most brilliant minds on Earth. "Sarah, the decoy fleet is in position. All systems are operating normally." Sarah smiled. The decoy fleet was her favorite part of the plan. 300 ships that looked like they had been built in someone's garage, cobbled together from spare parts and desperation. To alien observers, they would appear to be humanity's pathetic attempt at a space navy. In reality, each decoy ship contained technology that would have amazed even the Zephyrians if they had known what they were looking at. Holographic projectors created the illusion of primitive construction. Advanced computers made the ships appear to move clumsily, like they were difficult to control. Even their energy signatures were carefully modified to seem weak and inefficient. "What about the real fleet?" Sarah asked. Dr. Webb's eyes twinkled. "Still completely invisible. The Zephyrians have passed within a few thousand kilometers of our cloaked vessels without detecting anything. The real human fleet was something else entirely. Over the past century, while publicly struggling with basic space travel, humanity had secretly developed technology that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Faster than light travel, energy manipulation, gravity control, temporal mechanics. Advances that made the Zephyrian Empire's technology look primitive by comparison. "Captain," called out Sergeant Williams from the communication station, "we're receiving the hourly update from Deep Space Station Alpha." "Put it on the main screen." The display shifted to show Commander Liu, a stern woman with short black hair. She was stationed on humanity's most distant outpost, a facility hidden in the Kuiper Belt that had been observing the approaching alien fleet. "Captain Chen, the Zephyrians are maintaining their current course and speed. They'll reach the outer solar system in 36 hours. Our passive sensors are collecting detailed information about their ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical formations." Sarah leaned forward. "Any surprises, Commander?" "Nothing unexpected. Their technology matches what we observed during their conquest of the Altair system last year. Standard energy weapons, particle shields, and hyperspace drives. Their largest ships appear to be about 2 kilometers long." Dr. Webb chuckled quietly. 2 kilometers. How cute, Sarah had to agree. Humanity's largest warships were over 20 kilometers long, though the Zephyrians would never see them coming. The cloaking technology that hid the real fleet didn't just make the ships invisible to normal sensors, it made them invisible to nearly every form of detection that existed. "Any signs they suspect this is a trap?" Sarah asked. Commander Liu shook her head. "None whatsoever. Their communications are full of confidence. They're already discussing how to divide up Earth's resources and population. Admiral Vexton seems particularly pleased with himself. Good, let's keep it that way. Continue monitoring and report any changes." The connection ended and Sarah returned her attention to the command center. Around her, dozens of specialists worked at advanced computer systems, coordinating the most complex military operation in human history. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, "we're receiving a message from the Pacific Fleet." Sarah raised an eyebrow. The Pacific Fleet was one of humanity's real military formations, currently hidden beneath the ocean's surface. Each ship was disguised as underwater terrain, completely invisible to orbital observation. "What's their status?" "All ships ready and awaiting orders. Admiral Thompson reports that his crews are eager to see how alien technology compares to ours." Sarah almost felt sorry for the Zephyrians. Almost. Then she remembered the recordings from Altair, where the Empire had turned a peaceful trading civilization into a slave labor force overnight. Her sympathy disappeared. "Tell Admiral Thompson to maintain position. The aliens need to commit fully to their attack before we reveal ourselves." Dr. Webb approached again, this time with a concerned expression. "Sarah, I need to ask one more time. Are you sure we shouldn't try to communicate with them first? Once this starts, there's no going back." Sarah considered the question seriously. She had asked herself the same thing many times over the past few weeks. "Marcus, we've watched them conquer over a dozen species in the past 5 years. Have they ever accepted a peaceful surrender?" "Well, no, but..." "And what happens to the species they conquer?" Dr. Webb's shoulders sagged. "They become servants. Their resources are stripped away, their populations are relocated according to imperial needs, and their cultures are erased." "Exactly. The Zephyrian Empire doesn't negotiate. They don't accept equals. They only understand strength, and they only respect power that's greater than their own." Sarah gestured toward the display showing the approaching alien fleet. "In 36 hours, they're going to arrive here expecting to find a primitive species they can easily dominate. Instead, they're going to discover that they've made the worst mistake in their empire's history." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console again. "Captain, we're receiving reports from our observer teams throughout the system. The Zephyrians are beginning to deploy an attack formation." "Show me." The main display shifted to show the alien fleet's new configuration. The ships were spreading out into a classic conquest pattern, with heavy battleships in the center and smaller vessels moving to surround Earth. "They're planning to hit us from multiple directions," Dr. Webb observed. "Standard Imperial tactics," Sarah agreed. "Overwhelming force from all angles. designed to crush resistance before it can organize. She walked to her command chair and activated the communication system that connected her to similar facilities around the world. This is Captain Chen. All stations prepare for Operation Revelation. The aliens are moving into final position. Voices began responding from command centers in Australia, Brazil, Russia, Japan, and dozens of other locations. The entire planet was coordinating for what would happen next. Sarah looked around the command center one last time. In a few hours, everything would change. The Zephyrian Empire thought they were about to add another conquered world to their collection. Instead, they were about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. "All right, everyone," she said calmly. "Let's give our visitors a proper welcome." Admiral Vexthon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty Devastator, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main view screen. Around him, the largest invasion fleet in Zephyrian history moved into final attack position. 50,000 warships spread across space like a deadly constellation, ready to bring another world into the Empire's embrace. "Admiral," Commander Crix reported from his station, "all ships are in position. The human vessels have moved to intercept us." Vexthon's four eyes focused on the tactical display. The human fleet was pitifully small, only 300, ships arranged in a loose defensive formation between the aliens and Earth. The vessels looked exactly as primitive as the intelligence reports had suggested. Crude metal hulls, simple weapon mountings, and energy signatures so weak they barely registered on sensors. "How touching," the Admiral said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "The humans wish to make a brave last stand." Lieutenant Zara, who had been studying the human formation intently, spoke up. "Sir, something seems unusual about their deployment. They're not using any recognizable tactical formation." Vexthon glanced at the display again. The young officer was right. The human ships seemed to be positioned almost randomly with no clear defensive strategy. "They are amateurs, Lieutenant. They have never faced a real military force before. Their positioning reflects their inexperience." Commander Crix activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Prepare to engage the human vessels. Standard procedure: disable their ships and prepare for boarding operations. We want prisoners for interrogation." Acknowledgements began coming in from ship captains throughout the fleet. Weapon systems powered up, casting an eerie glow across the hulls of the massive warships. The Devastator's main gun, capable of cracking a moon in half, swiveled toward the nearest human vessel. "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "all batteries ready to fire." Vexthon settled back in his command throne, feeling the familiar anticipation that came before victory. "Open a channel to the human fleet." The communication system activated, sending a signal toward the primitive human ships. After a moment, a response came back, a simple audio transmission in the human language, which the ship's computers automatically translated. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," a male voice said. "You are trespassing in human space. Turn around and leave immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves." The bridge erupted in laughter. The sound echoed off the walls like breaking glass, causing several junior officers to cover their auditory organs. "Forced to defend ourselves," Vexthon repeated, his voice filled with amusement. "Commander Crix, please respond to the humans. Tell them that resistance is futile, and they should surrender immediately to avoid unnecessary casualties." Crix activated the transmitter. "Human vessels, this is the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are now subjects of the Empire. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your forces." There was a pause before the human captain responded. "We respectfully decline your offer." More laughter filled the bridge. Vexthon shook his head in mock sadness. "Such bravery. Such foolishness. Very well, Captain Morrison. You have chosen your fate." He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire a warning shot. Target the human ship on the far left. Use minimum power. I want it disabled, not destroyed." "Yes, sir." The Devastator's secondary battery swiveled toward the target and fired. A brilliant beam of energy streaked across space, striking the human vessel directly. The bridge crew expected to see the ship's shields collapse and its hull begin to melt under the intense heat. Instead, something impossible happened. The beam struck the human ship and simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no damage, no sign that the weapon had any effect at all. The primitive-looking vessel continued on its course as if nothing had happened. "What?" Vexthon stood up from his throne. All four eyes focused on the tactical display. Sensors report. The sensor operator, a nervous young Zephyrian with green skin, checked his instruments frantically. Sir, our weapon definitely struck the target, but there's no damage reading. It's as if the energy was absorbed somehow. That's impossible. Their technology is primitive. They don't have energy shields. Commander Crix was studying his own readings, his expression growing more confused by the second. Admiral, the human ship's energy signature just changed. It's now reading at twice the power level it was before. Vexton felt a cold sensation in his stomach, an emotion he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Are you telling me that our weapon somehow made their ship stronger? I don't know, sir. The readings don't make sense. The Admiral turned back to the view screen, where the human fleet continued to hold its position. The ships still looked primitive and crude, but something about them seemed different now. More dangerous. All ships, he commanded through the fleet communication system. Concentrate fire on the human vessels. Full power. Across the Zephyrian fleet, thousands of weapons opened fire simultaneously. The space between the two forces lit up like a star-going nova as energy beams, plasma bolts, and particle streams struck the human ships from every direction. For a moment, the human fleet was completely hidden behind a wall of destructive energy. When the light faded, Vexton expected to see empty space where the enemy ships had been. Instead, all 300 human vessels were still there, completely undamaged. "This is impossible," whispered Lieutenant Zara. Vexton's mind raced as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The combined firepower of 50,000 warships should have vaporized anything in its path. The energy output was enough to sterilize an entire planet. Yet the human ship sat in space as if nothing had happened. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice shaking. "The human ships are powering up weapon systems." "What weapon systems? Our intelligence report said they only have primitive projectile weapons." "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The power levels they're off the scale." Suddenly, space around the Zephyrian fleet began to shimmer. It started as a barely visible distortion, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then the distortion grew stronger and shapes began to appear. Ships, massive, sleek vessels that seemed to materialize out of nothing. They were unlike anything in the Imperial database, smooth, organic-looking hulls that seemed to bend light around them. Some were larger than the biggest Zephyrian battleships. Others were smaller but moved with impossible grace and speed. "Cloaking technology," Commander Crix breathed. "But how? Our sensors should have detected them." More ships kept appearing, hundreds then thousands. They surrounded the Zephyrian fleet from every direction, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly beauty that made the Imperial warships look crude and primitive by comparison. Vexton felt his legs give out, and he collapsed back into his command throne. In his long military career, he had never seen anything like this. The human fleet he had been preparing to destroy was just a tiny fraction of their actual forces. "Admiral," the communication officer reported, his voice barely a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." The same voice as before filled the bridge, but now it sounded different. Less desperate, more confident. "Admiral Vexton, this is Captain Morrison. You fired on our ships without provocation. This is an act of war." Vexton found his voice. You were hiding your true fleet. We were giving you a chance to reconsider. Unfortunately, you chose violence instead of wisdom." The Admiral looked around his bridge, seeing fear in the eyes of his crew for the first time in their careers. Outside, the human fleet continued to grow as more ships decloaked. The tactical display showed numbers that made no sense. The humans had at least 100,000 vessels, each one showing energy readings that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. "What do you want?" Vexton asked, hating the weakness he heard in his own voice. "Justice," Captain Morrison replied simply. And with that single word, Vexton knew that the Zephyrian Empire had just made the worst mistake in its history. Captain Sarah Chen watched the tactical display from her underground command center, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because the trap had worked perfectly, sadness because what was about to happen would haunt her dreams for years to come. "All fleet commanders report ready," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. "Human vessels are in position around the entire Zephyrian formation." Sarah nodded. Above them, In the cold darkness of space, over 100,000 human warships surrounded the alien invasion fleet like predators circling their prey. The Zephyrians had finally seen humanity's true strength, and the fear in their communications was obvious to everyone listening. "Captain," Dr. Webb said quietly, "are you sure there's no other way?" Sarah looked at her old friend and mentor. "Marcus, they fired first. They came here to enslave us. They've done it to dozens of other species, and they'll keep doing it until someone stops them." She activated her communication system, connecting to Admiral Thompson aboard the flagship Terra Nova. "Admiral, you may begin the demonstration." "Understood, Captain. All ships prepare for sequential weapons test. Let's show our visitors what human engineering looks like." In space, the massive human fleet began to move. The ships didn't rush forward in a chaotic charge. Instead, they arranged themselves with mathematical precision, each vessel taking a specific position in a complex three-dimensional formation. Admiral Vexthon watched from his bridge as the human ships moved around his fleet like pieces on a game board. His tactical officers were frantically trying to analyze the formation, but their computers couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. "Sir," Commander Crix reported, his voice shaking, "the human ships are powering up weapon systems. Energy readings are beyond anything in our experience. All ships evasive maneuvers." Vexthon ordered. "Try to break out of their encirclement." The Zephyrian fleet began to move, thousands of ships trying to escape the trap they had flown into. But as soon as they started to accelerate, strange distortions appeared in space around them. The stars seemed to bend and twist, and suddenly the fleeing ships found themselves moving backward instead of forward. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Zara cried out. The sensor operator checked his instruments, his skin turning pale. "Sir, the humans are using some kind of gravity manipulation technology. They're controlling space itself around our ships. We can't move." On Earth, Captain Chen spoke into her microphone. "Admiral Thompson, please begin with a small demonstration. Target the outer ring of enemy destroyers." "Copy that, Captain. Initiating quantum disruptor test." 50 human ships, each no larger than a Zephyrian frigate, moved toward the edge of the alien formation. They were sleek vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them appear like holes in space itself. The ships stopped exactly 1,000 kilometers from their targets and fired. What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about physics. There were no visible energy beams, no explosions, no dramatic light shows. The alien destroyer simply stopped existing. One moment, 100 Zephyrian warships were there. The next moment, there was empty space where they had been. No debris, no wreckage, no evidence they had ever existed at all. "Impossible," Vexthon whispered. "What kind of weapon could do that?" His science officer, a brilliant Zephyrian named Yexmil, was staring at his instruments in disbelief. "Admiral, according to our sensors, those ships weren't destroyed. They were unmade. The quantum disruptors somehow convinced the universe that those ships had never existed in the first place." The communication system crackled to life. Captain Morrison's voice filled the bridge again. "Admiral Vexthon, that was just the smallest weapon in our arsenal. We're going to give you a chance to see a few more before we finish this." "Stop," Vexthon shouted into the transmitter. "We surrender. Your power is clearly superior to ours. I'm afraid it's too late for surrender, Admiral. You chose to attack a peaceful world. Now you get to see the consequences of that choice." On the tactical display, more human ships were moving into position. These were larger vessels with hulls that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. As they approached the Zephyrian fleet, space around them began to shimmer with unnatural energy. "Temporal disruption weapons armed," Admiral Thompson reported to Captain Chen. "Ready to demonstrate time dilation effects." "Proceed, Admiral." The human ships fired, and this time there was a visible effect. Waves of distorted space rippled outward from the weapons, washing over a formation of Zephyrian cruisers. To the aliens watching, it looked like the targeted ships suddenly began moving in slow motion. But the effect was far worse than that. The temporal disruptors were causing time itself to move at different rates around the enemy vessels. What felt like seconds to the crews inside was actually hours in the outside universe. The ship's hulls began to corrode and age at an impossible rate. Metal fatigue that should have taken decades happened in minutes. Power systems failed as components wore out instantly. Within 5 minutes of real time, the affected ships crumbled to dust, their crews dying of old age in moments that felt like an eternity to them. Vexton felt his sanity beginning to crack. "What are you?" he whispered. The human response came immediately. "We are what you get when you threaten Earth." More human ships were moving now, these ones massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian battleships. Their hulls were covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than the normal three. Gravity lance batteries. "Prepare to fire," Admiral Thompson ordered. These weapons created focused beams of gravitational force strong enough to compress matter into singularities. When they fired, entire squadrons of Zephyrian ships were crushed into points of infinite density, creating tiny black holes that quickly evaporated in flashes of hawking radiation. Dr. Webb was watching the battle feed with horror. "Sarah, this isn't a battle. It's a massacre." Captain Chen's expression was grim. "That's the point, Marcus. Every other species they've conquered fought back with conventional weapons. They learned that resistance was futile and surrendered. But if we fight back with conventional weapons, we become just another conquest to them." She gestured toward the display showing the systematic destruction of the alien fleet. This way, they learn that humanity isn't just another species to be conquered. They learn that we're the species that conquers the conquerors. In space, the demonstration continued. Reality-warping cannons that turned solid matter into pure energy. Dimensional shears that cut ships in half by folding space around them. Molecular disassemblers that broke down enemy vessels atom by atom. Each weapon was more impossible than the last, showcasing technological capabilities that the Zephyrian Empire couldn't even comprehend, let alone counter. Admiral Vexton watched his mighty fleet disappear piece by piece. 50,000 ships, the pride of the Empire, being erased from existence by an enemy that fought with the power of gods. "Sir," Commander Crick said quietly, "we have perhaps 1,000 ships left. Request permission to evacuate the surviving crew to escape pods." Vexton nodded numbly. "Do it. Get our people out of here." But even as escape pods began launching from the dying Zephyrian ships, the Admiral knew it was too late. The Empire had awakened something that should have been left alone. They had poked a sleeping giant, and now they would all pay the price. The last thing Vexton saw before his flagship was consumed by a wave of pure annihilation was a human ship moving past his bridge. It was beautiful and terrible, a work of art that could unmake reality itself. 10 minutes after the battle began, it was over. The space around Earth was empty except for drifting clouds of atoms that had once been the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history. Humanity had sent a message, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the battle, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the same underground command center, but everything felt different now. The massive screens that had shown the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet now displayed peaceful images of Earth's cities and countryside. Life was returning to normal on the surface, though most people still had no idea how close they had come to invasion. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving the final reports from our cleanup crews. All traces of the alien fleet have been removed from the solar system." Sarah nodded. The cleanup had been almost as impressive as the battle itself. Specialized human ships had swept through the area where the fighting had occurred, collecting every atom of debris, every particle of alien technology, every hint that a massive space battle had taken place. To any future observers, it would appear that the Zephyrian fleet had simply vanished without a trace. "What about survivors?" she asked. Dr. Webb looked up from his tablet. "Exactly as we planned. We allowed 47 escape pods to flee the battle. They contained crew members from various ships throughout the alien fleet, giving them a good cross-section of what they witnessed." Sarah walked to the main display, which now showed the paths those escape pods had taken. The survivors were scattered across dozens of star systems, each one carrying the same terrifying story back to their people. "Any word on how the news is being received?" "Yes, actually." Dr. Webb activated a new display showing intercepted alien communications. "Our deep space listening posts have been monitoring Zephyrian transmissions for the past 72 hours. The survivors' reports have reached the Imperial capital." The display showed a translated conversation between high-ranking Zephyrian officials. Sarah read through it quietly, noting the disbelief, fear, and growing panic in their words. "They're having trouble accepting what happened," she observed. "Can you blame them?" Dr. Webb replied. "From their perspective, Their most powerful fleet simply disappeared. The survivors are telling stories about impossible weapons and technology that breaks the laws of physics. Half their government thinks the witnesses are suffering from trauma-induced hallucinations. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Station Alpha. Put Commander Liu through." The main screen shifted to show the stern face of the commander. "Captain Chen, we've detected massive movement throughout Zephyrian space. They're recalling fleets from all their border territories and concentrating them around their core worlds." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "How massive?" "Over 300,000 ships are being withdrawn from active conquest operations. They're also sending urgent messages to all their subject species, demanding increased tribute and resources for defense against an unknown threat." Dr. Webb chuckled. "Unknown threat. That's us. Any signs they're planning another attack on Earth?" Sarah asked. Commander Liu shook her head. "Quite the opposite. Emperor Zexthon himself has issued a galaxy-wide declaration. Earth is to be considered a forbidden zone. Any ship that enters the Sol system without explicit Imperial authorization will be considered lost and abandoned." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. The Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered thousands of worlds across the galaxy, was officially afraid of humanity. "There's more," Commander Liu continued. "The Emperor has also issued secret orders to all fleet commanders. Any contact with Earth or its representatives is to be avoided at all costs. If humans are encountered anywhere in the galaxy, Imperial ships are ordered to retreat immediately." Sarah felt a deep satisfaction at those words. The plan had worked even better than they had hoped. Not only had they prevented Earth's conquest, but they had also given the Zephyrian Empire something they had never experienced before: genuine fear. "What about the other species in the galaxy?" Dr. Webb asked. "How are they reacting to the news?" Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up another display. "Our monitoring stations are detecting increased communication traffic throughout the galaxy. Word is spreading about what happened to the Zephyrian fleet. Some species are celebrating quietly. Others are trying to figure out who could have done such a thing." Sarah studied the communication patterns on the display. "Anyone getting close to the truth?" "A few of the more advanced civilizations are asking the right questions," Rodriguez replied. "The Altarians, for example, are wondering if Earth might have been more advanced than it appeared. But most species still think of humans as primitive." "Good. Let's keep it that way." Dr. Webb approached with a concerned expression. "Sarah, I need to ask again. What's our long-term plan here? We've shown the galaxy that Earth is protected, but we can't hide forever. Eventually, someone is going to discover our true capabilities." Sarah had been thinking about that question for days. "Actually, Marcus, I think hiding might be exactly the right strategy. Think about it from the galaxy's perspective. They now know that something incredibly powerful is protecting Earth, but they don't know what. That uncertainty is our greatest weapon." She gestured toward the display showing galactic communication patterns. "Look at how the news is spreading. Every species that hears the story adds their own interpretation. Some think Earth is protected by ancient alien technology. Others believe we've made an alliance with some unknown super civilization. A few even think we're being watched over by beings from another dimension." Dr. Webb nodded slowly. "And all those theories serve our purposes." "Exactly. The unknown is always more frightening than the known. If they knew we were just humans with advanced technology, they might eventually decide to try again with better planning. But if they think we're protected by something mysterious and incomprehensible, they'll leave us alone indefinitely." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. "Captain, we're receiving reports from our embassy programs." Sarah smiled. "For the past decade, humanity had been quietly establishing small diplomatic outposts throughout the galaxy. To other species, these appeared to be simple trade missions from a minor world on the galactic rim. In reality, they were sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations. What are our people hearing?" "Universal caution about Earth," Rodriguez replied. "Several species that had been considering contact with humanity have now decided against it. The general consensus seems to be that Earth is under protection and should be left alone." "Perfect." Dr. Webb was still studying the communication intercepts. "Sarah, look at this. The Regellian Trade Consortium is actually proposing that the galaxy establish a formal quarantine zone around Earth. They want to make it official policy that no one approaches our solar system." Sarah laughed. They want to build a fence to keep themselves away from us. I love it. The communication system activated and Admiral Thompson's voice filled the room. Captain Chen, I have a report from the fleet. Go ahead, Admiral. All human ships have returned to their concealed positions throughout the system. Cloaking systems are functioning normally, and we've resumed our standard patrol patterns. To any external observer, Earth appears to be defended by nothing more than those few hundred decoy vessels. Excellent work, Admiral. What's the crew's morale like? There was a pause before Thompson responded. Mixed, honestly. Pride in what we accomplished, but also some sadness about what we had to do. None of us enjoyed destroying those ships, even though we knew it was necessary. Sarah understood that feeling perfectly. The human fleet had been designed for defense, not conquest. Every weapon system, every tactical protocol, every strategic plan had been created with one goal in mind: protecting Earth and its people. Using that power to destroy an entire fleet, even an enemy fleet, went against their basic nature. Admiral, please remind the crew that we prevented a war, not started one. The Zephyrians came here to enslave humanity. We showed them that was impossible. Now they'll tell that story to every other potential aggressor in the galaxy. Understood, Captain. Thompson out. Dr. Webb was looking at a new display showing long-range sensor readings. Sarah, we're detecting some interesting changes in galactic politics. Several species that were previous targets of Zephyrian expansion are now organizing defensive alliances. The Empire's retreat from their border territories is creating a power vacuum. Sarah considered that development. Are any of these alliances becoming aggressive themselves? Not yet. But they're definitely growing bolder. The Centaurian Republic just announced they're reclaiming star systems that the Empire conquered from them 50 years ago. Let them. As long as they don't threaten Earth or attack innocent civilizations, galactic politics aren't our concern. She walked back to her command chair and activated the communication system, connecting to similar facilities around the world. All stations, this is Captain Chen. Operation Revelation has been completed successfully. Return to standard monitoring protocols. Acknowledgements came in from command centers on every continent. The global defense network was returning to its normal state of quiet vigilance, watching the galaxy and protecting humanity from threats that most people would never know existed. As the command center settled into its routine operations, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Earth was safe. The Zephyrian Empire had learned to fear humanity.